Hello everyone, I am Camry Widmer with the Performance Pony Company, and I wanted to come to you guys today to give you a little bit of a fit, function, and how to measure guide with your small horse or pony. Right now we don't have any little ponies, so we're going to use this gelding of mine. His name is Blocker. He is a 13 3-hand quarter pony. I use him to rope on. He's super fun and he's just a cute little guy, and he uses a lot of our Performance Pony Company tack. So let me adjust over here so we can see. I thought I had my pivot set up correctly, that it would rotate with me, but it's not. So first of all, I have a Performance Pony Company halter on. No, I'm good. So we have the Performance Pony Company halter is what I use to catch him with. He has a smaller head than most horses. If I use a horse halter on him, we can get by, but when the nose is too big, then it makes it hard. We don't have it snug enough here, especially for our youngsters that are trying to lead these ponies and keep them from eating grass and everything. When they go to pull on their heads to pick them up from eating grass, when we have a halter on that's way too big, that's a delayed reaction in everything that they do. So if we can have that a little bit tighter, a little bit shorter across the crown, keeps it from a little less play in the rope altogether. So I do like the Performance Pony Company. He has the soft nose band. This one itself is a little bit wider, which that's fine if you have a sensitive pony or a small horse. If you have one that needs a little bit more bite, we do like the rope nose halters. When those kids pull, it's got a little bit more pressure, faster pressure, and it does help them just react a little bit faster. So we've got old Blocker here all brushed off. So I forgot to bring a Performance Pony Company saddle pad over to the barn, but I'm going to show you what it's like with the horse saddle pad. So this is a Todd Salone saddle pad. When we measure a saddle pad, we're going to measure from the front to the back, across the spine. So this is a 28-inch saddle pad, and then you're going to open it up. And you can do it flat, and when you measure it flat, you're just going to go side to side, and then from here to here. So it's 31 inches across, so 28 by 31. This is a nice saddle pad for barrels. You want to make sure that your saddle pad is wide enough here so that your saddle gets covered all the way. Our saddle pad is used to keep your horses comfortable, keep the saddle from rubbing, keep it up off of their withers. So there's a lot of good purposes for a saddle. This spot up here, this is for wither relief. So our wither is right up here. It's the point above their shoulders that kind of sticks up right here. You can see that this gelding, when I bought him, he'd been ridden by somebody who had a saddle and a pad that didn't fit. This little white spot right here used to be about that big around. I mean, it was big. When I got him, there were sores there. It was bloody. It was scabbed over. If you start to see, these white spots are probably never going to go away, just because he had them for so long and they were so big. So there's some hair follicle color changes there. But if you've got a horse that didn't, or a pony that did not have those, and they start to have them, that's a sign that your saddle pad, your saddle, that they're not fitting correctly. So we do want to make sure that we watch for these white spots here. And he does have them on both sides. So this saddle pad you're going to see with the kid saddle that we've got, it's a little bit too big. This is, again, a 28. Our Performance Pony Company saddle pads are a 26, so they're going to be a little bit shorter. So I'm going to put that on there. When we put the saddle pad on, we want it to come up over his shoulders. We don't want it to sit back here. If it's sitting back too far, it's not going to serve the purpose of the saddle. So we want to make sure if it's too high, that's also not going to work, and it's going to intersect with the neck and then being able to function correctly. So we like it to sit right there. Almost you can come up from the middle of the leg. It looks nice. One thing to do when you're trying to find out, no matter what animal you're riding, whatever horse or pony you're riding, we want this saddle pad to be short enough that as that horse or pony brings its back leg up, that this hip and the flank are free and clear as they're moving back and forth. If they get to bumping that saddle pad, and then this hip bone back here gets to rubbing on it, it's going to make it uncomfortable for your horse or pony, and you're gonna start to have issues. Our goal with everything Performance Pony Company related, and anytime I get on a horse, I want them to be comfortable. If they're comfortable, then they can perform and they can pay attention to me. As soon as I start to add discomfort, then that's my fault if my horse or pony starts acting up. It's my fault if the kids that I'm giving lessons to or the kids that are in the arena that aren't having success because of poor fitting tack. That's something that's in my control. So I try to make sure that we're free and clear there. See if we can get him to stand up so you can kind of see. This saddle pad fits him just fine. He is a small horse, so it fits him a little bit better. So now I'll go ahead and put that saddle pad on. If you want to measure with a measuring tape, you can put it, wherever your saddle pad needs to sit up here over, so it covers up the withers and goes to the back. Well, you can measure from where it needs to go to where it needs to sit up here on his back. Sometimes they don't like a tape measure right at first, so beware of that. So we'll throw this back on there. The leather wears as well. These are nice to have. As we cinch it up, you can see that we've had this saddle pad for a while. So this helps keep the pad protected every time that we cinch them up tight and that saddle slips and moves and rubs a little bit. This helps keep this saddle pad still in good condition. If we were to just do that on felt, this felt is going to compress and you're going to start to see tears and stuff like that over time. When it's time for a new saddle pad, so these saddle pads, as you look at them, the saddles will sit on there and they'll start to get thin right in here where there's a lot of motion, where that shoulder extends and that front leg extends and it rubs underneath of there. When you start to see big impressions in there, and if it starts to get really thin in that area, that's a sign that it's time for a new saddle pad. So this saddle pad's still good. Usually a good wool felt saddle pad will last you, anywhere from 1 to 5 years, depending on how often you use it and how hard you use it when you use it. It also makes a difference if your saddle fits correctly. If you're using a pad to correct a saddle that doesn't fit in the withers and it's putting pressure on this pad all the time, then you're going to start to see compression in that wool sooner. So we're going to put that back on. And if you guys have any questions during this, please write them in the chat and I will do my best to get to those and answer them. Okay, so now the saddle. This is just an extra little saddle that we have around that my nieces ride in. This has a 10-inch seat in it. It's got, when you're measuring for a saddle, you want to look at the bars and the gullet width. So there's these 2 conchos. There should be one on every saddle. This is where the tree screws into the leather. The tree is going to be made of wood or fiberglass. Sometimes it's fiberglass coated wood. Your cheap saddles might even have a plastic one in it. You do want to have a good quality tree so that it's solid for your horse, for your pony. Some trees, some cheaper saddles, these will break. They can cause warping. Different things can happen with that. So when you go to get a saddle, in my opinion, it is worth it to have a decent quality saddle. Now you want to make sure that this saddle is wide enough. So our gullet is going to be, when you measure from this to, right under here on this wool, you're going to measure across there from point to point. That's your gullet width. So when you hear about gullet, that's what they're talking about. Okay, we had a poor connection there. The seat size is going to be from behind the saddle horn to the tip of the cantle, right in the center. That's generally speaking. Some saddles are going to change that a little bit, so just beware. The best way to know if a saddle is going to fit you and your horse or your pony is to put it on. Put it on, ride them around, and the stirrups, where the stirrups sit, make a big difference too. What I see on a lot of youth and pony saddles, the 8 to 11, 12-inch saddles, and it's difficult because you guys, I want to let you know, when these saddles, there has to be enough leather to cover the tree and for the tree to work effectively on your pony. But then they're also, with all that leather, your kids' legs, as they're growing, are only so long. And so we have to have a stirrup leather that's short enough that you can shove it up in there, but we can't take out the leather from here to here that's covering up the tree. So sometimes when your kids are really little and you're having issues with that, some of it is, we haven't found a solution to it yet. I'm not gonna say it's inevitable, but as far as I know, I haven't found a solution and I haven't seen a good one out there yet. So when you do have to use the little buddy stirrups, it's inconvenient at the time, but when they're that little, just for the saddle to have the correct amount of leather to cover the tree so you have a good quality saddle, it makes it hard for these stirrups to go up high enough. Another thing to think about is that you want to make sure that your leathers, that your fenders here, these are called the fenders, twist enough that when you're a kid, when we get this cinched all the way up here, that these stirrups sit out like this so that they're parallel. Because what happens a lot for these little kids is that these saddles the stirrups get to sitting so flat. Well, then our feet are twisting around. So it makes it really hard for them to keep their balance and to ride comfortably, even though they're kids and they can move in weird ways, crazy ways. It still puts torque on their hips, on their knees, on their ankles, because that stirrup isn't sitting so that their foot sits flat in there. It's sitting so that their foot and their knee and everything has to come around here. So just things to think about with the saddle. Let me make sure nobody has any questions yet. Okay, we're good. Yeah, so I'm gonna put this saddle on. So when we talk about saddle fit, now you can see in this deal in this video how much is behind the saddle. In front, I want to have 1 to 2 inches right there. That way if this saddle slides up a little bit or back, we've got him covered. He's protected. The saddle is in a place that it's not gonna ride back. We don't want it back too far. If we put it back too far, then this saddle is gonna rock. We don't want our saddles to rock. Any extra play is going to cause problems. When we put this on, we want to push down on this saddle and see if there's any rock. There's a little bit in this one. If you have a lot of rock, you can adjust the size of your saddle pad. So we sell them in 3/4 inch, and now we have a 1/2 inch saddle pad as well. Generally speaking, an inch thick saddle pad, unless you have a saddle that's really wide or you have a horse that that's pulling a lot of bulls and needs to have a lot to absorb the concussion that's happening, then it's usually a 3/4 inch saddle pad is a great place to start, and that's generally what I use. So as we've got this on there, we want to make sure, again, underneath of this concho where this saddle screws in there, you can take your hand and run it underneath of this saddle pad and this saddle. You can do it if you're at a saddle fitting clinic or something like that, or somebody, they might even take the saddle pad off and see if the saddle fits without the saddle pad. So we're gonna take our hand, run it in there. If you can get your hand in here and it's nice and smooth, it can be like, I like to say it's like wearing a backpack. You want that backpack to fit solidly across your whole back. You don't wanna have a pencil poking you in the shoulders. So if you get under this part right here underneath of this concho where that screws into the tree, and you feel that there's a lot of pressure pushing down on your hand, your saddle's probably too tight for your pony. And what happens a lot of time on our pony trees, what I see is that they're really narrow. And I don't know who decided that all these ponies were these narrow little things, because a lot of them are this wide, and I actually use a wider tree on those ponies. But if it's sitting up, also if your saddle's sitting up on top of it and there's a lot of rock, your saddle probably doesn't fit. Okay, so to fix the fenders with not having turned out would be what? I've noticed that Brantley, she rides more pigeon-toed. I guess you'd say maybe because it's a newer leather, still stiff. Great question. So one thing you can do is you might have to get leathers. These have a really soft leather in them. Herman oak leather, really good quality leather that's thicker, isn't always super soft. And there's a big chunk of it. So it can be hard to soften that stuff up. You might have to go to a little bit, it's not a less quality, it's just a softer leather in your leather stirrups. That's one, or in your fenders, that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is take your saddle. So you're gonna take your saddle, find a corner like in a stall or something where there's a gate, and you're gonna twist those stirrups around, and you're gonna put a broomstick or something solid through them, a handle, something like that. And you're gonna flip that saddle upside down so that it has the weight of the saddle. You'll see, I've heard before I knew this trick that they just put the broomstick through while the saddle was sitting up, which that helps, but if we can flip it over, then it really helps and puts that extra weight on it so they get the extra stretch on that. So that's a trick that you can use that really helps. You can spray alcohol on, you can do this with cowboy boots too. If your cowboy boots are really tight when you first get them, you can just get regular old rubbing alcohol and spray some of that on them. That helps the pores breathe, and I'm not sure the science behind it, but it does work. So you can try that. Some people will also put some baby powder on there. It's just different little tricks of the trade that you can try. So I hope that answers your question on that. So yeah, now that we've got our saddle on, this saddle fits him pretty well. There's plenty of space right here. When I run my hand all the way down this saddle, it's got some pressure. It's like that backpack. I don't want it flopping back out here. I want to have enough weight on it that it's on me. Like you guys who are watching who have kids and who used to carry kids on your back, you know all about it. So now we will talk about our cinch. So whenever you're teaching somebody to cinch up a horse or a pony, the cinch, the front cinch or girth, I'm not sure, I haven't done the research on the science of which is correct. I call it a cinch. We use mohair cinches. I personally prefer mohair. Horses are coated with hair. Their whole body has hair on them. So in my opinion, if I go putting neoprene, this is again just my opinion, if I put neoprene on this horse, I have a much higher risk of chafing, causing sores, of things like that, especially if it's not a good quality neoprene, just because it's not natural. If I can put this mohair on there, then it's hair on hair, and so it's not going to cause as many sores. Now there's cotton, there's there's some that call them mohair. This is a little bit, we do have a mohair blend, but ours is 80 to 90% mohair, and then we have a few other particles, I'm not honestly sure what they are, in there, but I've always had really good luck. I've had people who started using our cinches because their ponies were chafing from the cotton ones, and when they switched over, their problems were eliminated. So I do like the mohair. I use it on my rope horses, I use it on my barrel horses, on everyone. A question that I commonly have is what is the difference between a straight cinch and a roper cinch? I personally think either is fine depending on what you're doing. The straight cinches, there's just not quite as much to them. They're going to fit up under here. They're going to sit up a little bit higher. If your horse has a big belly, it might, or your pony, it might cause it to ride up. So some of it kind of depends on that. When I'm roping and I know that my horse is going to have a lot of pressure on him, I prefer the roper cinch. And maybe if you're doing a lot of trail riding and you know that you're going to be going down hills and up hills and that saddle might have a tendency to slip up, this just distributes that pressure a little bit more across. It's no different than if I put it around my belly and somebody starts pulling on me here or on my back, then the pressure is more distributed here than if I take this and I put it around. Kind of an example. So if we're just running barrels and running around, it's fine. But if I'm pulling a sled behind me or pulling a cow behind me or going down a big hill, then I'm going to want that weight distributed a little bit more, that pressure. So that's the difference between, in my opinion, the difference between the roper and the straight mohair cinch. Let me make sure there's no questions. Okay, we're good. We're good. So to measure for our cinch, which we're going to do this one first all the time because it is what primarily holds the saddle on. If we were to come back here and do a back cinch first, and for whatever reason, something spooks the horse or anything like that, this whole front end of the saddle can flop around, it's gonna fall off, the saddle will get up underneath of them, it'll make them nervous, it's a mess. Same thing if we do the breast collar first and something spooks them, well then all that we have holding them on is this breast collar and stuff goes haywire. So when you're teaching your children, always do the front cinch first. If your pony isn't used to having things just flipped over them, then make sure that you walk around. Of course, safety first. This horse is used to it, so I am just going to plop that over there. Put my stirrup up. Okay, so we've got our latigos and oscillars. This pony, this little quarter horse here, quarter pony, is small enough to use one, but he doesn't have to. So there is that borderline where it's one way or the other. One thing that, like when I use a horse one with him, a horse latigo, sometimes I have to loop it around 3 times. So it just depends on what kind you have. Now, when you reach under here, reach under, we'll talk about how to size your cinch as well here in a minute. We're gonna go through, and I wanna show you guys the difference in this latigo versus a leather one. Make sure that your stirrups aren't in there. That's too much. Okay, so when I tighten this up, we want to be conscious of how much space there is between our saddle pad and the top of our cinch D-ring. Sometimes what happens is that we get them tight, and this isn't the greatest example, but sometimes we get them nice and tight, but then if we have a leather one, you can see that this is going to cause space right there. And if you've got it to where your D-ring is all the way up on your saddle pad, you're going to have a gap about that big, however the width of that saddle pad is or where that cinch has worn it down. You're going to have that gap in there. And when you have that gap in there, then that's going to allow the saddle to roll just a little bit more because it's not actually tight. So when you're measuring for these, like this one, it's too high. There's not enough space here. We want at least, probably 4 to 6 inches between the saddle pad and the top of the D-ring when your saddle is tight so that it can cinch down on there. Now, when you get to using leather on a horse, you can get by with it a little. Leather does have a little more stretch. It has a little bit more breathe. It'll come tight, but it's got its purpose on a bigger horse. My opinion with leather on a pony is that it causes too much bulk. We don't have enough space for that leather to stretch out like it needs to come tight and serve its purpose. That's where I really like these nylon ones with ponies because they're more compact, they come closer together so we don't have as much space between our saddle pad and the top D-ring of our cinch. There's different ways to tie these. If you like to use the tongue, I use the tongue almost all the time. Make sure that you pull this latigo back tight so that tongue is tight on there. Otherwise, you do risk it popping out. A little trick that I learned in my sale barn days, working at the sale barn, is that with this latigo, a lot of people want to come and pull it straight down. What can happen then as we ride, it starts to move, and then we catch it, oh, it's fallen down. If we take this latigo and we go in the back, go backwards, and then go right back through it, you can create this little bubble, and that will help prevent it from slipping back down through. Let's see. For fat ponies would benefit more from a rope or cinch to help prevent. I believe so. I like them. Some of our really little ponies, they don't have enough bulk to include that thicker cinch, and it's hard to make a cinch that has that many cords on it for a small pony. These have, most of the time, our roper cinches, they're going to have 27 strands, whereas our straight cinches are going to have 15 to 19 strands. So, we start our roper cinches at a size 18 inches. We start at 14 and 16 are straight, and then 18 to 24 in 2-inch increments come in straight or roper. I do think that the wider ones do help us keep that. Just like anything, I mean, if it's narrow, then it's not going to keep that saddle on as well as something that's wide. Both serve their purpose. There's not. Okay, so we'll loosen him back up. Alrighty. Let's see, now how to measure for a cinch. So I'm gonna undo this. You can take, and I'm doing it the way that, if we're just in the barn and we don't have all the tools, we don't have the fabric tape that's nice and soft that tells us, I'm gonna use just this string. This one has a snap on it, so that's kind of nice. It helps if you have 2 people to do this. 2 people really help. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the other side and I'm gonna snap this on to this top D-ring. And then I'm gonna slide it underneath of him just like we would a cinch, but I'm gonna do it on the other side. And then we'll talk about the off billet too. So I've got it underneath there. So I'm just gonna take this string and I'm gonna mark it, kind of pull it a little bit snug, like we want it to be. Make sure your pony's comfortable with this. Be careful, make sure you can't get kicked, all of the safety things. And then we're gonna, like, this is, when we pick up this foot, we can feel the elbow. So this is the elbow, the point of your pony's shoulder, her elbow, his elbow. So I'm gonna know that that's right there. I want this horse to be able to move back and forth without anything hitting his elbow of his leg. So I'm gonna make sure that I know where that is. You can also kind of see it's right in this area. And then from there, we wanna go up about 3 inches. That's where I want the top of my D-ring to sit. So then you can mark that. Have a piece of tape, a magic marker, something that allows you to mark that. And then you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. That's gonna give you about the size that you need. Again, we go in 2-inch increments. And then all of our latigos and off billets, we take them and we make them shorter. These are 4.5 inches, whereas a typical horse one is gonna be 6 inches. And then these holes, before we put more in it, start right here, all the way down there. So these ponies that we have to wrap it around a couple times, we don't, on a typical one that you get for a horse, they don't have enough holes in there for it to work like we need it to. So we add 4 extra holes in all of these 4 to 5 in all of our latigos and off billets. So you're gonna do the same thing on the other side, and that'll give you a general idea how we want to, measure for our latigos and off billets. We'll undo that. While I've got this, for our breast collars, you can do the same thing. Now, a breast collar can be tricky to measure for simply because there isn't like a standard as to where you're attaching. Some saddles don't have the D-ring, so you're attaching your breast collar to your cinch D-ring instead of your breast collar D-ring. So when I get questions and they say, hey, like, how do I know what size I want? Well, the best way to know if you want a mini or a pony is to actually take and measure for it. So we're just gonna take it, we're gonna bring it down here. We want our breast collars, the purpose of a breast collar is to keep the saddle from sliding backwards, especially on our rolly ponies, when we're trail riding, when we're going fast. You'll see like calf ropers, reiners, working cow horse people, a lot of times they don't ride a horse with a breast collar. A calf roper or a heeler, somebody heeling a steer, doesn't necessarily need one because when they go to dally, that saddle's going forward. Do I still think it's important to have one? Yes, but that's sometimes why you don't see them. We watched a young lady the other day who was making a really nice run here at a clinic, and she came around the second barrel and she didn't have a breast collar, and that saddle slid back and her horse started bucking because as the saddle slid back, she had a back cinch on, got in his flank, and she nearly got bucked off. So it's a preventative deal. A lot of your ponies, I know some of your kids are just getting started and they're not going super fast, so they might not need a breast collar for the speed effect or the pulling effect or anything like that. But if you've got a rolly pony and your saddle's sliding back all the time, it's a safety measure to make sure that that saddle stays in place. Okay, so from there, we're gonna measure across here. And then we wanna measure from the D-ring to the point of the center of his chest. You can just do it on one side because it should be the same on both sides if your horse or small horse or pony is level, or you can bring it all the way around and just measure that. That will tell you how much space you want from here to here for it to adjust. It's a simple, foolproof way to check for that. You can also, if you're getting really picky about it, all of our mini and pony breast collars, most breast collars should come with an adjustable tongue. The tongue strap or that middle piece goes between their shoulders or between their legs, their front legs, and it hooks up back here. So when you've got this, and you've got it marked, then you can take your tape measure and mark and see what the total distance is. But you can also get it where you want it and go from the center right here down to where it's going to meet your cinch and snap on. Another thing about cinches, if you're going to use a breast collar, a lot of your cheaper pony cinches do not have these middle D-rings to snap anything onto. So we're going to snap our tie down strap onto this D-ring on the front D-ring, and then your back cinch goes into the back D-ring. Another thing about Performance Pony Company tack, so we do have the mohair. These are made in America. We've got a little tag on there. These are made in Texas. We use all stainless steel hardware. I've seen too many people, I've had it happen to myself, that they get these made out of nickel-plated zinc on the cheaper ones. And over time, they work great for a year or so. We keep these things around for years and years and years. And then we're in the middle of a run, that zinc, it breaks, and your flank goes back, and now you've got a problem. So your back cinch goes back, and now you've got your kid bucked off. So we do try to use equipment, and everything that we have has stainless steel. We do not carry any products that have nickel-plated zinc. Our reins used to on the little, the buckle to adjust. We eliminated that, so we have new reins and a new manufacturer for those. So that's all that. The other thing that can happen depending on the ring that you've got, these, if they're not made correctly, if they're made cheap, will slide around. When I started the Performance Pony Company, I blindly ordered like a lot of cinches, and I didn't ever get a sample first from the company that I ordered them from. And these rings would slide all the way around. Well, when we go from this length and then we twist it, well, then that gives about an inch of play in our cinch. So my cinches that were cinched tied up, nice and tight, as I started riding, then that shifted, and now all of a sudden my saddle is falling off. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You can wash these. I don't recommend putting them. You want to keep it soap free, but if you get a lot of hair in there, and hair on there is good. When natural hair can rub on natural hair, same with your saddle pad. If that natural hair can rub on each other, then you're going to have less chafing, less sores, less all of that. But we do want to wash them off once a year or so, get all the sweat out of it. Just use a garden hose with a little bit of pressure. Get in there, rub it off. These things will last you a long time. We at the Performance Pony Company are not here for a rebuy policy. We want you to get quality stuff that it's going to last you for all of your children. Hopefully you have lots of them and lots of ponies, so you need lots of stuff though. Okay. Let me grab a breast collar. So this is a used Performance Pony Company breast collar. I've had it for quite a while. It fits perfectly on this little guy. We have 5 holes on each side for adjusting. Again, stainless steel buckles. I've probably been using this breast collar for 4 years now, and it's been through a lot. And I don't think I've ever oiled it either. So we're doing good on that. So you can see that this breast collar for him, it fits nicely. This is in my opinion, this is a perfect fit for a breast collar. I've still got, 3 inches of holes on that side, 3 inches of holes on the other side. So I can adjust this thing up nice and tight. When we adjust our breast collar, we want to make sure, if I suck this thing up to where it's all the way up here, and I pull it tight on both sides, then it's going to be up on this horse's chest. It's going to be up on his windpipe. His air moves up and down through his neck, just like us. It's the same as we have. So we want to make sure that this sits in a way that it doesn't constrict his air. It doesn't constrict his air. It can move enough that as he needs to reach out, it will come up and down with his shoulder. So we don't want it flopping. If you're flopping, that's too loose. But when I buckle this down here, This horse can move like he needs to. He can reach out, he can stop, he can lift, he can do everything he needs to. If he's got to pull something, this can come tight on him and he can power through it still. So that's how I like a breast collar to fit. Kind of loose up here in the front so it's not causing any restriction there. If you have one that's too big, so we talked a little bit about how different saddles fit differently. Some of your youth saddles don't come with this ring for a breast collar, and you end up putting it down here on this cinch D-ring. When we do that, that's going to change our measurements on everything, and it's also going to change where this cinch or where this breast collar sits. So if I put this down here, it's going to sit down a little bit further. So if you have one like that, and our mini ponies, our saddles, again, we have to have a tree in there that's big enough to cover their back and all of that. So this saddle on a mini pony, a pony that's this big, is going to sit down to about here. So it's going to make a difference on how that saddle fits. So even if you have these rings, the saddle is going to make this breast collar still sit low. So we do have our wither straps. What the wither straps do, this is too small for him to do that way, so I'm going to move it back up. Excuse me. And these are adjustable. They have 3 holes on each side, so we fit a variety of ponies. But we're going to take it, just snap it on there, come across here. It picks it up off of the shoulder, and it keeps it in the position that that pony can still move out like it needs to. Now, again, we don't want to get it to where it's all the way up here, and then it's kind of defeating the purpose, and we're getting up into their windpipe and into their muscles. So just be careful on how you adjust those. These are wither straps. We do have them in russet and in pony sizes now. Or russet and dark oil. Okay, there's still no questions, so we're doing good. All right. Let's, I'll grab a back cinch real quick and we'll talk about back cinches. Okay, this is a Performance Pony Company back cinch. A Performance Pony Company pony size back cinch with the billets does fit him. This small horse is big enough that, and he has bellies big enough, he's a easy keeper, that I can keep horse size billets on him. Sometimes if your pony's smaller and stout, they're still gonna need the pony billets. A lot of times you might have a billet and you're like, well, it's perfectly fine, it's got lots of leather. But if it's too big and it flaps all the time, that can be a problem. Another thing is that a lot of billets don't have enough holes in them. Some of them don't start until here. So just something to consider. Whenever you buy a back cinch billet, you want to make sure that it has this ring on it so that you can attach. I use a curb chain. It's got a snap on both sides to attach it to my cinch. So that way I can just snap it and unsnap it as I switch saddles and whatnot. So we can do that. If you happen to have, sometimes if you use these for a long time, these will pull out, if over years and time, and it is still leather. It's not immortal. So there are times that you have to replace it, but you can take a leather curb sometimes, and you can run that around the whole thing. For the pony one, you're gonna wanna use a pony curb. For a horse, you can use a longer one. Those are gonna be more sturdy and more comfortable for the horse than if you use just like a piece of leather that's probably gonna break too. So, now what did I do with my curb chain? I'm not sure where I put it. So, when we attach this, we wanna make sure that this ring goes to the front. Just lost my chain. When you decide how far you want it adjusted, you want to make sure that when you hook this to the ring, the goal is to your front cinch ring, that they're level, that they come together. When this is tightened up, I want these two to be lined up ideally. You're going to make sure that it doesn't come back here. As you come back there, you saw exactly what this little gelding does. He says, I don't like that, that's my flank. So you wanna make sure that this, and he gets a back cinch all the time. So you wanna make sure that this back cinch is in a place that it's not gonna be too far back. We don't wanna turn him into broncs. And that's why we need to have something sturdy in the center here that keeps this from breaking and sliding back in the middle of a run, because that's when we start to have issues. So yeah, we just want that from your back flank straight down. Sometimes your little pot belly ponies and stuff, that back cinch is gonna slide up a little bit. Sometimes that's kind of difficult. A lot of times that has to do with your saddle not fitting quite right too. Sometimes these little guys, they make it difficult for everyone. So let me hook this up on the other side. And overall, our goal is to have everything. If you did it on one side, it should look the same on the other side. We don't want it to be uneven. We want everything to be even. So anything that we're talking about here, we want it to look the same on the other side. If you've got 5 holes showing over here and 2 holes showing over there, take the time, adjust the cinch so that it's all centered. Now the back cinch. In my opinion, before you use one, we're gonna talk about that too. Before you use one, make sure that your pony or your small horse is used to one. If you just go on here and you put one of those on there and you cinch her up tight and this pony has never had a back cinch on him, you might get a bronc because they're not used to it. So you want to just make sure that they're comfortable with that. Walk them around with it at first. If you are in a position that you can put them in a round pen, you can take something, a rope of some sort. Now you want to make sure that this rope, as it comes tight, it can release as well. And you can put that around their belly in different places and just tighten and loosen, tighten and loosen, tighten and loosen until they're used to, excuse me, these cinches being tight on all parts of their body. That's something we do with our colts before we ever throw a saddle on them. When we get on them for the first time and we cinch them up, they're used to it. They've had it around their flank. We know it doesn't bother them around their flank. We put it under their tail, all of those things. If you're not sure about that, contact a professional, somebody who knows a little bit more about how to do that. And for any of this stuff, if you guys are new or you're uncertain about how it's supposed to fit or function, or you look at it and you say something's just not right, take pictures, take videos. We've got these awesome smartphones. Send it to somebody who does know. Schedule a lesson. Parents, every single parent that pretty much comes through our door says, my kid listens so much better to you than he does to me, even though I'm saying the same exact thing. Happens to everybody. If you can send your kids to lessons, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. They have a different coach for every sport that they play. Even if you were a superstar, you still have a coach at the school that's teaching your kids. So I highly recommend doing the same for your equine related events as well. So once we've got that all adjusted, some people you'll see will ride with a really loose back cinch. In my opinion, there's no need to have a back cinch if it's gonna flop around. The more anything flops around, we don't wear a belt and then just let it hang around. When we do this, this is a distraction. Not only is it a distraction, but the middle of summer, it's July, it's humid, it's hot, it's whatever, the flies are out, those horses get to swat and it flies. Say they got one big old bee on their belly and they get up there and they get stuck in the back cinch. Then you have a wreck. Say you're trail riding and you're going down a hill and your horse steps up over something and there's a branch gets caught underneath your back cinch. You got an issue. If you're not gonna have it tight enough to serve a purpose, don't have it. If you're gonna have it, make sure it's not flopping around causing other issues, otherwise there's no reason for it. Again, my opinion. So yeah, have it snug. A big reason that we use the back cinch is to keep the back of the saddle down. Yes, to keep it intact. Hopefully you have a saddle that fits well enough that it'll sit where it needs to. It also helps keep the saddle from sliding side to side. When we're going down hills, it keeps the saddle from lifting up. When we're dallying on a steer, it keeps the saddle from sliding forward and going whoop on the horse. We want that saddle to stay nice and tight down on that horse the whole time so that when we dally, they just get to be hunkered down. and move with them. That saddle shouldn't be a barrier for them to move or to perform. It should be a tool that we get to use to stay on. So in some disciplines, if you're roping calves or working cow horse type stuff where that horse is moving this way from the front end a lot and they're on their hind end and those shoulders have to be able to elevate a lot, you will hear from time to time that some disciplines will actually tighten the back cinch more than the front cinch when they're doing that, just so that that horse has that freedom to move those shoulders that much more and it doesn't restrict them. Some people you'll see just like, I mean, they have this thing so tight that this poor horse is cut in half. I like to have mine tight enough that it's going to stay on. If I'm roping steers or something, it's going to be a little bit tighter. I do make sure that I get off before I perform. You know, once you get on your horse and ride them around a little bit, just like us, as we get winded and our muscles start to tighten up and we start to use our body, things get a little tighter. So you do want to make sure to check your cinch more than once. Croupers are another thing for these small ponies that we can use sometimes. The crouper goes from the back of the saddle, the way that we have them adjusted right now. They're hopefully going to be back in stock today. But that's going to attach to the back of the saddle, or you're going to have two D-rings. Like, again, you've got screws back here, Chicago screws generally, that you can replace those with a D-ring so that you can snap that crouper that goes behind over your horse's butt, and then it goes underneath of the tail. If it's adjusted correctly, it does not hurt your horse or pony, unless there's an extreme case or something dramatic that happens. Again, make sure that your horse or pony is used to it at first. Ideally, we're going to get a saddle that fits better, but some of our little tiny roly-poly ponies, that can be really difficult, and the crouper will help keep that saddle down. They use them on mules a lot, donkeys, they use them for packing, that kind of stuff to keep everything centered while those horses are moving up and down mountains. So they've used them for millions, thousands of years, so they're a good product to have if you need them. If you have any other questions about the saddle and fitting all of that, please type them in. I'm going to move on to the leg boots. So for the leg boots, we get a lot of questions about these. How do I fit a leg boot? A couple fun facts about the Performance Pony Company leg boots. We do have some amazing Velcro. The Velcro is good. It lasts a very long time. We take a lot of pride in our products, as those of you who are fans of ours know. So we do try to do our best with the quality. Our small size starts at an inch smaller than your smallest horse size. Overall, that's a generalization. I know different companies have different sizes, but this is a small pair. Our small has 3 pieces of Velcro. Our extra small has 2 pieces of Velcro. So when we put these on, we're gonna open them up, and I like to just stick it back so that it doesn't get in the way. Parents, if you've got little kids, you might have to help them with this at first. The purpose of a leg boot is to protect the ligaments and tendons that run down the back of the horse's leg. It is also our back leg boots. Like this little guy, he really likes to stop. He's a little breakaway pony. Those horses that really get underneath themselves and turn hard, it protects their fetlocks and the bulbs of their their ankles down here. So we want to make sure that we protect that. Our suspensories and tendons, try to push that down a little bit. So the suspensories and ligaments mainly run down the back of this horse's leg. So they start up here, they run down. This, between the knee and the fetlock, is generally the area that we see the most injuries. So it helps prevent, sometimes like in deep mud, deep sand, stuff like that, those horses will step and they'll hyperextend. So they'll go down further than what they need to, causing extra stretching, tearing issues there. So what this leg boot does is it helps, when we put it on correctly, it cradles that fetlock to kind of support them if that were to happen. They also help, sometimes horses get in positions, especially if it's muddy or nasty outside, that they're going to nick themselves. So this helps keep them, if you've got this hoof going and they are going as fast as they can and they got a lot of power behind their turn and something happens, they can get in there and come over here and give themselves a pretty big ding. They can bruise the bone. Lots of different things, and it even happens with our ponies. Not as much with ponies, but it can happen. And if we have a nice pony, we might as well protect him because these are a lot cheaper than a vet bill. So we're gonna put this on. When you measure for your Performance Pony Company leg boot, wherever the bottom of this knee is, we wanna make sure that these do not restrict bending or moving of the knee. So you can even pick up your pony's leg and see where it needs to move. So like on this little horse, I wanna make sure that I start my measurement right about there where it doesn't restrict. I can see that his knee can bend completely. So I'm gonna start there, and then I'm gonna measure to below the fetlock. So whatever that measurement is, that's gonna be the length of the leg boot you need. The length is going to be measured from the top to underneath of this bulb. Any leg boot that doesn't have this kind of shape that's gonna cradle and fit right in there, you don't want it. It's not the kind of leg boot that you're looking for. So when you go to put them on, you can just start at the top and slide it down. Keep your hand there, like where this cup is. You can see that it's cupped there. Where that cup is, I'm gonna just cup my hand there as well. So I'm going to slide my hand down, and when I feel it cup in there, that's where I'm gonna stop. And then I'm just gonna pull it up and kind of snug it in there. Now I'm gonna take my thumb, I've got my fingers cradling it so it stays where it needs to. I'm gonna hold this piece around with my thumb. It does not need to be, you don't need to have it wrapped all around the front. This doesn't fit there. You wanna make sure it's cradled where the left side of it is about center with the leg. Now, I like to start in the middle, so I still got it cradled. I'm using my thumb to hold it in there. Start in the middle, come around. Go to the top, come around. Go to the bottom, come around. Now, this piece here, this one's pretty important. We want it to go around and come back up at an angle. It kind of cradles, it continues to cradle that fetlock. So when you get done, this is what you want your Performance Pony Company leg boot to look like. Got it cradled up underneath of there. Whoops. Oh, there we go. You can see it's cradled up underneath of there. Comes up at an angle. Sorry about the light. So that's how they should fit. Some of them, your diameter of your leg isn't quite as thick as this one, so your wrapping might come around a little bit more, and that's okay. That will happen. Okay, let's see. Make sure we don't have any other questions yet. Your questions kind of get lost in there a little bit. Okay, we're doing good. All right, so that's how we fit those. To fit the back leg, we're gonna do the same thing. Our back legs are usually going to be a little bit longer. There's a longer space in the cannon bone between the hock and this joint and your fetlock, so those are gonna be a little bit longer. We do not carry a front boot and a back boot at the Performance Pony Company. The way that we do it is we have small and extra small. If you have a bigger pony or a small horse, this little guy, he's gonna use smalls all the way around. If you have a mid-size 11-hand pony, you might use extra 11 to 12-hand. You're gonna use probably extra smalls on the front, smalls on the back. If you got the bigger pony or the smallest pony, extra smalls all the way around. We, generally speaking, they start at about 10 hands is where, 10 to 11 hands is where our leg boots start. And we start there because most of those smaller ponies aren't going that fast in the amount that we order at a time. We can't quite order the quantities that we need to be able to have the prices that we've got. So that's how we do that. You know, if like this little gelding, he's big enough that he can use that actual horse, a small horse on his hind end. So we've got that. We'll take those off. These leg boots, these are used for protection. They're not meant to be used for parades and stuff like that. This neoprene does get hot. It holds in a lot of heat. If you're in mud or a lot of sand or anything like that, you want to put these on when you need them, and then you want to take them off. We don't want to add any extra unnecessary heat to these guys or to their legs. That can cause additional injuries. So just beware of that. Bell boots, I think bell boots are fine. You can leave those on for longer periods of time. unless they're muddy or you're in a lot of sand and it's going to cause rubbing or discomfort. Wearing leg boots while trail riding. No, I think it's unnecessary. Again, you're riding a long ways. Unless you're doing extreme trail riding, you're going over jumps, you know that your horse is going to be getting a lot of concussion. They're going to be risking a lot of injuries. Then I would say no. Trail riding, the horses are in their natural element. They should know how to move their feet correctly. I love trail riding. If you're having a horse who you find like they're tripping, they're lazy with their feet, they're not picking it up enough, take them out to the trails. Let them figure out how to move around, move over logs, stuff like that. It's one of my favorite things to do with these horses. And I'm an arena girl, and I don't like to trail ride for a long time, but I do like to do it for short stints, for sure. Let's see. Okay, so now let's move to the bits. Bell boots, we can go over that real quick too. I forgot those over at the warehouse as well, the office. So this little gelding, for his size, oops, sorry buddy, he has large feet. He has small, medium horse-sized feet. He actually has better feet than a lot of our big horses. So I do not use Performance Pony Company bell boots on him because his feet are too big for them. These are some decent bell boots that we got a while back, and these are actually size medium and they fit him well. So ours are very similar to these. They have this bulb in there. The bulb is used to, we put it in the back to kind of help it not slip around and twist around a lot. We want to keep that in the center. These bell boots are to the point that they need replaced. When you start to see and feel that there's no padding left in these bell boots, when they start to, these still have a little bit in them because there's quite a bit of cushion still there. But when you start to feel that that's all broke out and they're not, if they hit the back of their foot, if they overreach and their hoof clips this, then it's going to still cause problems. It's time for a new pair of bell boots. The purpose of a bell boot is, again, when a horse is extending out, sometimes, depending on how they extend, usually if you catch that your horse is clipping themselves a lot, the back of their heel bulbs, or if you see that you're tearing up a lot of bell boots, that's generally a sign that we want to look into seeing if there's something pain related, if there's something shoeing related that's causing that. A horse should not overreach in a straight line, generally speaking. So if they're doing it consistently, whether you've got barrel horses or anything, you're going to want to look into why that might be happening. Some do have extraordinarily long strides, but even racehorses don't wear bell boots. So that tells us something. But why we do use bell boots is because we're asking our horses or ponies to turn, to stop, to run in all kinds of different terrain, and they're usually not just going in a straight line. So what this does is as that horse or pony reaches out, the back of this bulb, their heel bulb, they can reach out there and clip it. When they do that, it causes a lot of pain. It's a very uncomfortable spot. They're going to be stuck in the mud. It's so close to the ground that they're constantly going to be getting dirt in it and stuff. So we want to put these on to protect them from doing that. It also helps protect them from, again, if they're in mud or turning or doing something like that, if they were to clip themselves, it also helps prevent that. So we want these to come around and be snug on there. They can shift a little bit, but the goal is for them to be snug enough that they're not going to twist around. We do have a new size at the Performance Pony Company. Previously, our small bell boots were similar to the size of a small horse, and we found that there aren't enough ponies that are this size, and our sizes were a little bit too big. So we did create our new small is a little bit smaller than what we previously used. Again, we're all about facilitating, and we want to make sure that our products fit a wide variety of ponies. The Velcro is created so that you can adjust it. This one fits him good, fits him well, so they can be pretty tight. If his feet were a little bit bigger, I can have a little bit more of a gap in the front. They're not made to protect the front. We don't really need to protect the front of their hoof, so it's all about protecting the sides and that heel bulb. yeah, so that's leg boots. Again, if anybody has any questions about any of that, please type it in the chat. So yeah, now we'll go to bits. So I did not bring all of our bits over, but I did bring a selection of them. We're very fortunate to have Widmer's Rock and Roll Arena here in Deep River, Iowa, where we're videoing today. This is my parents' place, so very, very fortunate in that department. First of all, it's really important to have a head stall that fits. If we don't have a head stall that fits to begin with, then we can never get our bit tight enough to actually function correctly. If somebody asks you to bite down on something or to hold something in your mouth and they just put it at the tip of your lips all the time, eventually that would get old. But if they put it in a place that you can hold it in your mouth, then it's a lot easier and it's a lot more comfortable for you because you have the muscles, the strength, and it can just sit there. Whereas if you're constantly having to hold it, that becomes irritating and you don't like it. Same thing with the horse. If it's too loose, then our bit can't function because it's going to sit too low down in the mouth. So we want to make sure that we have a head stall on your ponies that allow your bit to function correctly. If your bit does not function correctly, you cannot expect that pony to ever respond like you need them to. When I first started the Performance Pony Company, I actually started it not because, I appreciate ponies, but it wasn't like, oh, I love ponies, I want to start selling pony tack. We had a lot of clinics, a lot of camps, a lot of things going on. We used to have family rodeos here. I've done lessons for the last 15 years or so. And kids were coming and going with these ponies, and it got to where they're pretty head stalls that they bought from who knows where, and their horse bits, they'd come in and I couldn't adjust it. You know, it literally was not possible to adjust it without tearing these head stalls in pieces. And even if I could get it adjusted, the bit still didn't fit. And it was like I couldn't blame the ponies for being frustrated. It wasn't their fault that we're pinching and pulling and yanking and jerking and don't have any control because everything's too big and loose and they're uncomfortable. We can't expect them to be good if nothing's fitting them. And so I couldn't help the ponies. I couldn't help the kids who were really trying to do these new things at the clinics, and they were sitting correctly and their horsemanship was right, but their tools still weren't right. And so, like, as a clinician and somebody who they're looking to, a coach, I didn't have the tools to make these ponies and these kids communicate correctly. And something had to be done about it. So we actually started with the Performance Pony Company cow pony bit. I told my mom, I said, if somebody could just create a junior cow horse bit for a pony, it would change the industry. It's versatile, it's soft enough, it's got enough give to it that kids who have, you know, that are heavier handed, it still slides a little, so it's not just constant. And so that's where we started, and from there we've evolved and had created a few more bits over time. So we'll start with this. This is our most popular bit. This is a 3-piece cow pony bit. When you are wondering what bit you want to get for your pony, first of all, you can reach out to us. Please give me a call, shoot me an email. If you can send me videos of how your horse or how your pony is responding to the rider in a barrel run, just riding around. If I can see a video, that's going to help me more than anything, because I can sell you any bit in the world based on what you say, but if I don't see how your child is using the bit, then I can sell you the most aggressive bit to get woe in them. But if your kid's pulling, yanking, jerking, and all the way back here and ki-eyeing, or if they're pulling up here, no bit's going to fix that. So if I can help you pair the right bit with your child's hands and maybe talk about the correct function of the bit, then we can get somewhere together. Trust me, I want to sell you products, but I want to see you be successful with them more than anything. So when you're wondering how a bit works, inside a horse's mouth, and you can watch hundreds of videos of this on YouTube from other professionals who explain this. If you look at a horse's mouth, they've got teeth. They have 66 teeth in their head. There's a Rodeo Kids podcast about that we did with Brooke Gray. That's pretty awesome. But their teeth, we've got their teeth in their front. We'll see if he'll cooperate. We've got these teeth there in the front that just help them graze. They can pull up grass, they can nibble, they can eat hay and all that with that. But when they do that, then they pull it up And then in here, there's a gap. There's no teeth right there. That's the bars. And then they pull that up, and then they chew. And when they chew in a rotation. They don't chew back and forth. If you see that your horse is chewing back and forth, they probably, or your pony, they need to get their teeth done. We highly recommend having their teeth done every 8 to 12 months. Things change. They get really sharp edges. They can get waves in their teeth. They can get points on their teeth that you can reach your finger. I don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing. But you can reach your finger into the side of their mouth and you can be like, wow, like that almost cut my finger because it's so tough. They also have wolf teeth that grow in as they get a little bit older, and those kind of grow up a little bit further in their mouth, and the bit can hit that. That can cause a lot of pain. If you have a pony throwing their head a lot or jerking side to side, definitely get those teeth looked at. They can get sores worn on their tongue or their cheeks. So that's all important stuff to know if you're going to own a pony. Even they need care, even though they can be little turds and all of that. Again, taking care of their teeth, their maintenance, their feet, all of that is in our control. So let's control the controllables. Okay, so they've got their teeth in the front, and then they have their bars. So if you put this bit on your hand and pretend like the outsides of your hand are the bars. The center is the tongue. So this would be your tongue. And then anything outside of that is going to be your cheeks. So when we pull on a bit, you want to kind of pull on it like you would on your horse. So if I'm going to pull, ideally, we're going to pull like this. Where you feel pressure is where your horse or your pony is going to feel pressure. So on this bit, this 3-piece cow pony bit, when I pull and I put pressure on this side, because it's broken in 3 pieces, when I pull on one side, you see that this other side doesn't move much. So that means as we're going, say we're turning to the right and I pull up, it's mostly going to have pressure on the right side. So we're going to have that bend. Now the other, same thing going this way. When we pull straight back, if we take it in our hand and we pull straight back, then we feel pressure on both sides. So that means bring your whole head down, keep it collected. The other thing that I really like about this bit, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, is that it has what's called gag. I don't know why they call it that, but that's what they call it. So the gag on any bit, if you have a bit that slides up and down at all, that's called gag. Slide, gag, whatever you prefer to call it. When it's at the bottom, it's resting. When I start to engage this rein and there's pressure there, it's going to slide. And this bit does not become fully engaged until it hits the top. Now it's fully engaged. So when we go and we're turning, a lot of times what happens if we use the popular Tom Thumb, which in my opinion is not a good bit, especially for kids. There are some ponies that get along in it and horses, but 95% of them, I would take them out of it. If you're using a Tom Thumb and having issues, the bit's probably the issue. So when I'm going to turn, if I have a bit that's super solid or that just breaks in the middle and has no give to it, as soon as I start to pull, that pony feels everything. So if you have gotten to where your kid's pulling like this a lot and they're pulling straight back to their hip and they're holding up underneath them, that pony never gets any relief. They never get any warning. It's go turn. And eventually, that would make you a little frustrated too if you were riding along with somebody or somebody held your hand and they just turned and they jerked you off to the side. So that's what happens a lot that I see with these ponies, is that they don't have any chance to prepare to turn. And that's where this bit, it's got, like I said, it's got enough to give you direct pressure on whichever direction you want to turn, one side at a time instead of engaging that whole body. If you neck rein a lot, then you want the whole body to come around. But most of us, when we're in our turns and stuff, we want our body to, our horse's body to follow ours. And so we just need them to bring their nose and come around. When they're riding, what I see a lot of is that kids want to either come up here and turn like this, back to their hip, helping. If we can't turn like this, like I'm not going to walk around and turn like this. If I can't do it with my body, our horse can't do it with their body. We need to ride in the saddle like we would walk it on the ground. So like at all my clinics, my lessons and things like that, I have the kids get off and I ask them, okay, which foot are you going to lead with? If you're going to lead with your right foot to turn to the right, then you're not gonna wanna be sitting on your horse with your left foot forward expecting him to turn like this. It's uncomfortable for us, it's uncomfortable for them. Horsemanship is huge. Knowing how to sit in the saddle is huge. Again, no bit will function correctly if we don't have the rest of all of this to help follow it. I like a leather curb to start out with. If our pony's really unresponsive, then I go to a chain curb. The leather's just gonna be a little bit softer, but either is fine. So now we have a bit, this is our Whoa trigger bit. It's going to still have the bend and flex. It's a little bit more solid, so we can have those horses that are ponies that want to be like over bendy, and I call it noodly. If you see them being noodly with their head and in their neck, this is going to stiffen them up a little bit, but it still swivels independently. So when I pull on one side, we're going to feel mostly that pressure. So we're going to be able to turn this way or turn this way rather than turning this way. But it's got the port in it. With the port, that goes up into the roof of the horse's mouth a little, or the pony's mouth a little bit more. The idea with this is that as we pull back and they feel that pressure, if they come down, when they come down, that pressure relieves. So that's how the port works. When they stick their head out, they feel that port. When they come down, the port goes away, or when they stop, or whatever it is that we're looking for. It is important to release. If we don't release, they're never going to know what we're looking for. So that's always a good option. We have this chain port. This has just a little bit more Whoa to it. The longer the shank, that's from where the mouthpiece is to the bottom, that's the shank. From the mouthpiece to the top, from here to here, that is that's the purchase. This overall is the cheek piece, but the shank, the length of the shank is going to make a difference on how much leverage there is. There's a lot more leverage with the shank. So if you have a bit that's got a really long one, might be a little bit much depending on what you're doing. This is more of a performance horse bit. If you are a pony bit, if you are not going at high rates of speed, I don't recommend these bits with the longer shanks unless you really are out of control. So this one with the chain, it molds to the mouth a little bit more. Most ponies, horses, it's really comfortable. I use a chain on almost everything. My rope horses, my barrel horses, I get along with it. The kind of bit that you're going to use depends on your hands. I can use a bit and on my horse, and the next person can get on my horse and say, I don't like it. But it's because of how they ride, it's how they center themselves, the kind of pressure, how they pull. There's some people who are naturally more aggressive, they're gonna pull harder. There's some people who are a little bit more timid and they're gonna be lighter handed. So those are just things to consider just because one kid got along in a bit on that pony, now the pony's running off, but your kid's 10 times more timid and 10 times lighter with their hands, you might need more bit. Or vice versa, you might need less bit if you have a heavy-handed rider now. So usually if any horse or pony is really being naughty, if they've got a good foundation to begin with, if you had a good pony at one point in time and now it's going haywire, there's usually a reason. So start to dig and do some research on that. This bit here, it's going to have a lot of gag, a lot more gag. So as I pull, it's warning, 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 and then it hits completely at the top. So I like these for heavy-handed riders. This bit does have a little bit more, it's more on the bars. When I pull back on this bit, I can feel a lot more pressure on my hands. And then this goes up into the roof of the mouth as well. When we pull back at the same time, this is going to go up. The idea is that when we go up, and then they come off of it, as they come off of it, it's going to release. But we have to make sure that once they get to here, once they get to the speed we want, we let them go. That way they know what's right and what's wrong. To measure for a bit, to know what kind of bit you need, we are going to you can take a string, you can take, I was gonna bring a ruler over. I don't want to use an actual tape measure because this is way too sharp. But if you have a wooden ruler or even like a thicker metal one, something like that, you can even take this string and ease it in there. But you're just going to ask them to open their mouth. Oh, you're all right. He says, I don't know what you're doing, woman. be graceful because they probably don't know what you're looking for. But I'm just gonna move this in there. And then I'm just gonna have him wait till he holds it in there. I'm gonna put my finger on each side, or again, this helps to have two people. And then you can mark it on one side, or if you know, like we're gonna bring it all the way to the end here. So I know there's a knot there. So that's where we're gonna start. Put my fingers where I want that bit to sit, and then I can pull it out. Then I measure from here to there. Whatever that distance is how big of a bit we want. Ours come in 4 and 4.5 inch mouthpieces. For the mini ponies, again, it's difficult because there are so many different sizes, but there aren't a lot of people that are super serious about it, so we don't go beyond a 4, below a 4 at this point in time. If you need to make up for just a little bit of space, you can use the bit guards. That can help too. So that's one way to measure, again, a ruler, anything like that, and then measure the overall length. You want to make sure that there's a little bit of space. We'll do this and then we'll wrap it up. Again, if you guys have any questions ever, it's performance.pony@gmail.com. That's posted everywhere. You can contact us through the website. You can give us a call. My phone number is on everything. We're here to help you. We want to see you be successful, so please reach out to us. This little guy actually has a mouth that's big enough that I can put a horse bit on him, and a horse head stall. And this one's actually a little bit small for him, but we can see how the bit is supposed to fit at least. So right here, when we look at this would still work for him. He could do a 4.5 inch, but it is a little bit too small for him. I want to make sure that there's enough space that when this swivels back and forth, there's not pinching going on. If there's pinching going on there, then you're going to have a whole different issue and the bit's not going to be the problem. Now, if I put a bit, like he's way too big for a 4-inch mouthpiece, we can get by with a 4.5 inch. It would fit him okay, but for his size of mouth, he's going to want a 5-inch mouthpiece. So I'll grab a horse bit real quick. So this is the bit that I like to use for him. It is made by J.D. Marto. It's 5 inches wide. It has a roller in it. Our Whoa trigger bit does have a bit, it rolls in the middle. It's not as apparent as this, but it does roll. The roller is just a distraction. If you have a horse that plays with their mouth a lot, it's just something for them to do. It can help, just like a fidget spinner or like those rings that they have now. That's just an anxiety thing. I really like this. It's a chain port. Again, I use this horse to rope on, but it's still got some bend and flex. So I use this one, or I use a bit, it's a version of a miler bit. I guess I actually use a miler bit that's very similar to our Whoa trigger bit, and that he really likes that bit. So this, I'm gonna slide it into his mouth, and I'll show you the difference in. When you put a ported bit in, you got to make sure too, your pinky and your thumb spread out the curb chain, and then your other fingers guide the mouthpiece in, but the port has to be up. If the port is down, it does not work. Slide it over. So like here, you can see this bit is hanging down in his mouth. If I pull down at all, like now he's gonna kind of play with it because it's too low. When I go to pull, oh sorry, you can't see that. When I go to pull on him at all, see how that bit moves all the way up there? And he's broke enough that he's responding a little bit, but that's just wallering around in his mouth. I don't really have anything to hold on to. The curb chain, it's loose, it's not doing its purpose. So this bit needs to be adjusted. And when you adjust one side, you want to make sure that you wiggle it a little so that it's even on both sides. So now another kind of general rule of thumb, and then we'll wrap this up, is to have a wrinkle. If you look there, there's a wrinkle right here. Some people will say 2 wrinkles. I like to start at 1 and then maybe go to 2. Different horses have different pressure points. Some horses you'll see like they have really loose lips. Like there's a lot of different breeds have different stuff. Like if you have a halflinger, they've got pretty loose lips. So they need it to be a little bit tighter. They're not as sensitive. This one's pretty good, so that's plenty for me, 1 to 2. With our curb chain, we want it to be adjusted that when I pull, if I'm just sitting here, there's not pressure. But as soon as I pull, I want it to engage. So I would actually go just a little bit tighter on that. You can play with those adjustments to see what works best for your rider, their hands, and your pony, but we just want to make sure that it's not sloppy. When we look at this bit is a smidge too big. This is probably 5 1/4. He could probably go with the 5. We know that the 4 1/2 is a little bit on the verge. Typically speaking, a horse bit's going to be 5 1/4, and then our pony bit starts at 4 1/2. So we do have a little bit of a bubble in there. We're kind of tricky sometimes. So, yeah, that's everything that I have for today. Again, if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me, performance.pony@gmail.com. My name is Camry Widmer. I am the owner of the Performance Pony Company. I'm a horse trainer. We put on clinics. I've been a professional barrel racer, breakaway roper, tied goats, run poles. Horsemanship comes first and foremost to me. No matter what discipline you're in, at the end of the day, horsemanship is horsemanship. The basics of the basics, and making sure that your horse responds to you and your rider is most important. So again, any questions, reach out to me. I also own another company called RodeoKids.com. If your kids are interested in anything Western lifestyle, check it out. We have an awesome podcast on there that's super fun. We interview a lot of different people. The kids get to be on there. They do monthly challenge videos. We also have the Pony Pros. There's all kinds of things that we're doing to try to help these youth get to the next level inside and outside of the arena. So check that out, performancepony.com and rodeokids.com. Thank you guys for listening.